All right, let's dive in. Today we're taking a deep dive into Joseph Nguyen's Don't Believe Everything You Think.
Oh, this one's good. It's a real exploration into like the root causes of suffering, and how we can, actually find peace, love, joy, all that good stuff in our daily lives.
And one of the things that really struck me right off the bat was this idea that suffering is actually rooted in our own thinking.
Yeah, it's a bold statement for sure. But honestly, Nguyen does a great job of, backing it up.
Yeah, he uses some really interesting examples. Like, remember that one with the two people in the coffee shop?
Oh, yeah. That one's so relatable.
It's like, picture this, right? You walk into your favorite coffee shop, same coffee, same atmosphere, but there are these two people.
Mm-hmm.
One is totally stressed out, phone's buzzing, shoulders are tense, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
The other person is just chilling, enjoying their latte, maybe reading a book, looking totally peaceful.
Same exact situation, but two completely different experiences.
And it all comes down to what?
Their thoughts, the stories they're telling themselves about that moment. We get so caught up in our own heads, we forget those stories are just that. Stories.
It's like we're these walking, talking story factories.
Constantly churning out narratives. And, we're wired for survival, right? So our minds are always scanning for threats.
Always on high alert.
But the thing is, sometimes the biggest threat is, the threat we create in our own minds.
Like our own minds are the ones holding us hostage.
Exactly.
So we've got these stories, these thoughts running rampant.
And they trigger our fight or flight response, even if there's no real danger.
So even if we're just sitting there sipping our coffee, our body's reacting as if we're facing like a saber-toothed tiger.
Exactly. Heart racing, palms sweating, that feeling of anxiety washing over you.
All because of a thought.
It's pretty wild when you think about it.
It really is. And, Nguyen doesn't stop there. He takes it a step further with this really interesting distinction between thoughts and thinking.
Yeah. This was big for me.
Right. It was a total light bulb moment.
So thoughts are kind of like the raw material of our minds. They just pop up, right? Like notifications on our phones.
Ping. New thought?
But thinking, that's what we do with those thoughts. The analyzing, the judging, the overthinking.
That's where we get into trouble.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Okay, so I got to ask, this is a bit abstract for me. Give me a concrete example.
Okay. How about this? I want you to imagine your dream income.
Got it.
Yeah, multiply that by 5.
Whoa. Okay, things just got complicated.
What's happening?
Well, that thinking mind of mine is kicking in, throwing doubts everywhere, saying things like, that's impossible, or I'm not worthy of that kind of money.
A perfectly good thought. Now totally sabotaged by your own mind.
It's like I had this beautiful butterfly, and my thinking mind just came along and, squashed it.
And that's why Nguyen says, thoughts create. Thinking destroys.
It's so simple, but it's so powerful. Look, wow, we're actually destroying the good stuff with our own minds. It's crazy.
So what would happen if we could just let go of that need to overthink everything?
That's where non-thinking comes in, right?
Exactly. And I know it sounds kind of out there at first, but it's not about having a blank mind or becoming, some emotionless robot.
Yeah, because that's never going to happen. I've tried, believe me.
Right. Non-thinking is more about recognizing those thoughts, letting them be there, but not getting all caught up in them.
Like watching clouds drift by or...
Yes, perfect analogy. They come, they go, but the sky remains unchanged.
And Nguyen has this other great analogy about a cluttered mind.
The murky water.
Yes. It's like you don't have to keep stirring that water to try and make it clear. You just let the sediment settle naturally.
And that's non-thinking, allowing that clarity to emerge on its own.
Okay, so I'm starting to get this, we're not suppressing the thoughts, we're changing how we relate to them.
Right, exactly.
But how do we actually live this non-thinking life? We have jobs, bills, kids, responsibilities.
Real world stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where it gets practical, and I think where a lot of people might say, well, yeah, this sounds nice, but Nguyen totally addresses this head on.
Yeah.
He talks about how our goals often they kind of fall into 2 categories. Those that are born of inspiration, and those that are driven by desperation.
Oh my gosh, this was huge for me. I'd never thought about it like that.
It's powerful, right? So think about, a time when you felt stuck in your career, for example. A desperation goal, that might be I just need to get any promotion just to escape this job.
Just get me out of here.
Right. It's fueled by anxiety, maybe fear of financial insecurity or something.
Yeah, totally.
Whereas an inspired goal might be more about, okay, how do I find work that really lights me up?
Mm.
even if that means learning new skills or taking a risk.
Like it's not about running away from something. It's running towards something you're excited about.
Yeah. Exactly. And those inspired goals, they tend to kind of emerge naturally from that state of non-thinking. You know what I mean?
It's not forced.
You're not forcing it. You're more like aligned with your true self.
I love that.
There's this sense of flow.
Yeah.
Of things kind of falling into place a little bit more effortlessly.
Okay, but let's be real.
Yeah.
Most of us aren't living in a Zen monastery.
Right.
We've got deadlines, we've got bills, the to-do list never ends.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So how do we actually cultivate non-thinking when our lives are so chaotic?
Well, and Nguyen offers like some really down-to-earth tips, surprisingly.
I like this.
One is like creating a supportive environment, It's about like what we feed our minds.
Literally and figuratively.
Exactly. It has a huge impact.
So like being mindful of what news we're consuming, maybe limiting social media, choosing to spend time with people who lift us up instead of drain us.
Yes. It's about consciously creating an environment that like nurtures peace and well-being. He also talks about establishing what he calls an activation ritual.
Oh, yeah, the activation ritual. This was great. I loved this.
It's so good. It's essentially like a morning routine designed to kind of set the tone for your day.
To get you in that right headspace before
the craziness hits, right?
Yeah.
So it could be meditation, it could be journaling, a walk in nature.
Whatever gets you connected.
Whatever helps you tap into that inner stillness.
I've been experimenting with this, and it's crazy how even just like 10 minutes of quiet time can totally shift my whole perspective. I'm less reactive, more focused.
Yeah.
And like the little things just don't bug me as much.
That's the power of starting your day from that place of non-thinking and then carrying that into your work too.
Okay.
Focus on activities that you enjoy, that energize you. Maybe there are even tasks you can delegate or eliminate, completely.
Ooh, delegate. I like that word. Anything to shrink that to-do list?
Right. It's all about making those conscious choices to align your actions with your values and your sense of purpose.
Love that.
But then there's the question of, like, okay, what about those pesky habits, right? The ones that kind of sabotage us.
Oh, yeah. We all have them.
We all do.
For sure.
And Nguyen, he has this really cool process for kind of addressing those destructive habits.
Okay. Tell me more.
It's not about willpower, he says.
It's not. What is it about then?
It's about understanding, like, what's the underlying trigger
Okay.
and replacing it with, a healthier choice.
So instead of just being like, I'm going to stop eating junk food.
Right. Which never works.
It's more like, okay, what am I feeling when I reach for that bag of chips?
Exactly. What need are you trying to fulfill? Is it boredom, stress, loneliness? Once you figure out the trigger,
Then you can find a better way to deal with it.
a more supportive way.
Yeah, maybe it's going for a walk, calling a friend, doing something creative.
It's much more compassionate and effective.
Addressing the root cause, not just the symptom.
Exactly. And speaking of compassion, this brings us to another really key aspect of non-thinking, the role of intuition.
Ah, yes. Intuition. Tell me more.
So Nguyen describes intuition as like the voice of our inner wisdom,
That gut feeling.
It's that direct connection to something greater than ourselves.
Whether you want to call it the universe, God, or just, our higher self.
Whatever resonates with you.
And this is where things get really exciting for me. Because it's about tapping into that inner knowing, that gut feeling that often, defies logic.
Yeah, totally.
But somehow just always seems to steer us in the right direction.
And it's in those moments of non-thinking,
Yeah.
when we quiet the mental chatter, that we become more open to those intuitive nudges.
It's like we can finally hear the whispers of our soul.
I love that. It's so true.
It's like those times when you just know you need to reach out to a certain friend. Or it's time to leave a job that's not serving you anymore.
Or to finally start that creative project you've been putting off.
Yes. And it often feels scary, right? Because it's stepping outside of our comfort zone.
It is.
It's taking a leap of faith without having all the answers.
And that's where fear can be a big obstacle
Oh, yeah. Fear is a big one.
to following our intuition. But Nguyen reminds us that fear is often based on illusions.
It's just a story.
It's stories we tell ourselves about what might happen.
And he uses that amazing Zen story about the master pouring tea into the overflowing cup.
Yes. To illustrate how we need to, empty our minds of those preconceived notions.
And make space for something new.
Exactly. We get so attached to our own ideas, our own way of doing things, that we don't leave any room for the unexpected.
It's like we're blocking the flow of miracles.
Exactly.
It's like we're trying to force that square peg into a round hole instead of just letting go.
Yeah.
And allowing the universe to show us the different way.
It's about surrender.
Surrender.
And it's so fascinating how some of the most brilliant minds throughout history really understood this.
The importance of non-thinking.
Of accessing that state.
Like Thomas Edison napping with those steel balls in his hand.
Yeah. To jar himself awake at just the right moment.
Or Einstein playing the violin to spark those breakthroughs.
They weren't afraid to, let go of control a little bit.
To surrender to the unknown.
Yeah, and they understood that, that space, that stillness, that's where the magic happens.
That's where the inspiration lives.
That's where the aha moments come from.
And it's available to all of us.
Not just the geniuses.
It's about trusting that the universe is working for us.
Not against us.
And sometimes the biggest shifts come from letting go of that need to control everything.
And just surrendering to something bigger than ourselves.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about the root of suffering, the power of non-thinking, all those practical tips for actually living it. But what does this all really mean? How do we take these concepts and actually put them into practice in our everyday lives?
That's the question, right? And Nguyen's answer is, well, it's both simple and kind of radical.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
He says, suffering is optional.
Wait, hold on. Optional?
Yeah.
We can just choose not to suffer.
It's not quite that simple, of course, but...
I mean, what about grief, loss, heartbreak, all those things? Those are real.
Absolutely. He's not saying those experiences just disappear or that we should pretend they don't exist.
Right.
What he's getting at is that a lot of times our suffering is amplified by the stories we layer on top of those experiences. It's the resistance, the why me, the clinging that keeps us stuck in that cycle of pain.
So it's not about becoming some kind of emotionless robot.
Right.
It's about recognizing that our thoughts and emotions, they're real, but they don't have to control us.
Exactly. Imagine you're walking through the forest and you trip over a root.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You might feel pain, frustration, maybe even anger. But those feelings, they'll eventually subside. But now imagine you trip over that same root, but this time you get caught in a thorny bush.
Ooh. Okay, this is getting interesting.
You're still feeling that initial pain.
Yeah.
But now it's compounded by those thorns digging into your skin, the struggle to get free.
Oh, I get it. The thorns are like our thoughts about the situation.
Exactly.
Like, this shouldn't have happened, or it's always something, or I'm so clumsy.
We're adding layers of suffering to an already painful experience.
It's like we're holding on to the thorns. Ouch.
And non-thinking isn't about denying the root. It's about recognizing that we have a choice in how we respond to it.
Ah, okay, so we can get caught in the thorns, or
we can acknowledge the pain, tend to the wound, and keep moving.
It's like zooming out to see the bigger picture.
And from that wider perspective, we can start to tap into something even greater, I think.
Okay, what's that?
Surrender.
Surrender.
Mm-hmm.
I love how Nguyen talks about this, that it's not about giving up. It's about letting go of that need to control everything.
Right. Trusting that the universe has a plan.
Even if we can't see it yet.
Even if it doesn't make sense.
Okay, so here's a question for you to ponder.
Sorry, me.
What if, instead of trying to figure everything out, you just trusted that the universe is working for you, not against you?
I love that.
What miracles might unfold if you surrender to the unknown?
It's a powerful question.
It's a little scary, honestly.
It is. It is.
It's so much easier to just stay in our comfort zones, even if they're full of suffering, than to actually take that leap of faith into the unknown.
It does take courage, for sure.
But the rewards could be huge.
They could be immeasurable.
And we don't have to do it all at once.
We don't.
We can start small, right? What are some small ways to practice surrender?
Oh, there's so many. Letting go of the need to be right.
Okay.
Trusting your intuition more. Embracing the present moment, even when it's messy.
Yeah, these are all great.
It's a process, for sure.
Well, this deep dive into don't believe everything you think has been a real game changer for me.
I'm so glad to hear that.
And I think the biggest takeaway is that we have so much more power than we realize.
We do?
We can choose to suffer, or we can choose to find peace. It's not always easy, but it's always a choice.
It really is.
And it all starts with awareness.
Recognizing that power of our own mind.
Exactly. And if you're ready to embark on your own journey of non-thinking, I highly recommend checking out this book.
Me too. It's packed with so many great insights.
Until next time, fellow deep divers.
Keep questioning.
Keep exploring.
And keep diving deep.
Into the wonders of your own being. See you next time.